Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here. I'm doing this video because recently at E3 it was announced that there would be, the new content for Fallout 4. So we got, and some of these have already been released. We still have to wait for the Vault, whatever it is, Vault contraptions or Vault kit, whatever they're called. But we have our contraptions now, which is whatever. And so we're getting the Vault stuff, and then we're getting Nuka World. And Nuka World is the next big expansion after Far Harbor, and apparently it is the last piece of DLC coming to Fallout 4. And the reason I'm making this video is because when I heard that at E3, I'm finally, after all this time, I'm finally getting the chance to sit down and talk about it. But when they announced that, like, oh, this will be the final piece, which wasn't announced, not that I heard at least when I watched the Bethesda conference. I heard it like a little bit later in like some other interviews that I'd watched. And when I heard that, I was like, that really blows, because they had this huge ordeal about, raising the price of the season pass from, I want to say it was from like $30 to $40 or $30 to $50, something like that. It was a fairly big increase. And I remember when that happened, they told people like this is going to happen at this certain time. And I made a whole video about that, and I bought the season pass myself because, and I explained this in that old video I did, I was like, with it being Bethesda, I kind of trust them to do right by us and actually put a ton of good content in there. And it's like, alright, they're doing, a $15 or $20 price increase. I still got it for the cheaper price because I was like, well, I know they're, increasing it, so why pay more? But I was like, I'm going to buy it now, and I just assume it'll be good because they already had the stuff with the Automatron and Far Harbor and the Wasteland Workshop, and then basically they just did that, for a second time where it's like, okay, here's your contraption workshop, and then Vault workshop, and then Nuka World. So you get your two workshop things, and technically, the Automatron actually does have its own story. It's set within Boston, unlike Far Harbor, which actually, takes you off to Maine. But and that's, that was good. I like the Automatron stuff. It was cool. It's like an actual story mission. You meet new characters, and you meet some older characters from other, other games as well. And you also get to make your own robots. So it had its, two cool sides to it. It was kind of in the middle, where Far Harbor was like, here's just like a whole new island and new stuff to explore and new styles of enemies and new characters and missions and even weapons to, unlock, which was very cool. And then here's Automatron thing, which adds a new workshop for you, as well as has, a smaller scale story for you to explore. And then just the flat out workshop, which I haven't even experienced yet, which I do believe does actually have its own story, like where you set up, things like that. So I believe that does also have a bit of story to it. But then they have the contraptions thing and the Vault workshop, and the Vault thing I love. I'm very excited to try that out. I think it's great. But the contraptions thing is so simple. It's like, oh, make elevators and stuff. And that was the big thing when they, first announced the DLC. It was like, oh, well, a bunch of this stuff, especially when they first did like the robotic thing for the Automatron. It's like, well, people already are making mods where you can, make your own allies and stuff like that, and make Assaultrons and stuff. And while they still added some new elements, because they added like crazy, like a million different parts to put your own sort of robots together, so it was still different. The contraptions thing was literally like, here's elevators. I saw a video like months ago where it was like, here's elevators. And it was kind of funny when I first watched it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the exact same elevator that I saw in that old mod video. Like, it just happened to be the same style. There are multiple elevators. But I'm pretty sure they used the exact same style when the trailer first started. I was like, huh, that just happens to be like almost the exact same elevator. And I'm pretty sure it was the same place because they always show it at the theater, which is a great place outside of the stupid pool of radiation that you can't seem to like get rid of. Aside from that, I love the theater. The drive-in theater is the best. But it was just like, okay, well, there are contraptions. Like I said, personally, I haven't tested it out just yet because I haven't had the most interest. I was like, it's kind of made just for YouTube videos as far as I'm concerned, because otherwise, I mean, I guess you could combine it together with sort of the Deathclaw or the custom battle thing, and you spawn in enemies to battle in like these deadly arenas, and then you just make a contraption. If they hit it or by accident or whatever, it'll set off guns or something like that. And so it seemed really minor. Like I said, the vault thing seems really cool. And then Nuka World, it's a whole new expansion. I would assume it's not going to be within Boston. It's going to be, excuse me, like, somewhere, totally different, like way off or whatever. And that's exciting. It'll be like Far Harbor. And then it's like, that's it. And the reason I kind of feel like that is sort of cheapened a little bit. Like, even, especially for people that may have bought it for the $40 or $50. Like I said, I really can't remember because that was months ago when they announced that. But, even for people that, like when I bought it at its lower price, I feel like it's still not enough content. And the main reason, I think, is because a lot of the content, does come from mods, or is already at least done in mods. And like I said, with the Automatron stuff, it certainly has additions to it that aren't in mod form. But the contraptions thing, and I'm sure there are some additions there as well that aren't, in mod form. But it's almost just like, even if none of that stuff was in mod form, it's like, really, that's it? Like, oh, let me make an elevator, which is cool for the house building, portion of it. And then, they had, like, the Rube Goldberg thing with the bowling ball going down the pipes. And it's like, well, that's nothing. Like, oh, let me make some silly conveyor belts and stuff like that. And it's just like, this is great for novelty, but as far as actually expanding, you know, 12 hours, unless you're like just really into making your own stuff inside of the game, it's not going to add like 12 hours worth of content. It's not going to be like Far Harbor, which was really great, and then what I assume Nuka World is going to be as well, which, I'm hoping it's really good. It seems like it'll be something very interesting to experience. It seems like, just like Far Harbor, it'll be brand new because it's like an amusement park, so you'll see a ton of people all together, and that's not something we have in this game outside of really Diamond City and technically Sanctuary and your other little spots, but those are just like NPCs where it's like, oh, I want to trade with you, and that's really it. So there's no place where it's just like a ton of people all the time. And Nuka World is going to be that experience. Are we going to be able to ride roller coasters? That's been a big question. So there's a lot to be excited for, but then it's still like, we got two things and that's it, and we're done. We got Far Harbor and Nuka World, and everything else is just already in the the Boston setting. It's just extra little stuff. Automatron adds the robot workshop and that storyline. It adds, I think they're called Junker characters. Those are really cool because they're very tough to deal with. It's random people that like use robot parts for armor, and they always have robots under their control as well. And sometimes you'll go up against like the toughest enemies. It's insane, and I love that because I'd be like really strong, and then once I installed the Automatron DLC and like those robots started coming in, I fought like a bunch of sentry sentry bots, and they'd be shooting missiles at me, and then there were other ones that would like kind of shoot right for you really fast, and they'd have like really tough like electric chainsaws, all sorts of stuff. So I love that, but with everything, the way they kind of blew it up, like, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to, increase the price of the season pass to basically give you one really cool thing because, the Far Harbor stuff was already announced. And it's like, we're going to increase the season pass, so you're going to be getting, these three things, and then we'll have other really big updates. And contraptions is cool. The vault thing, I think, is probably, that might actually be worth it, depending on how in-depth it gets, because that's what I was curious about. Like, how far are they really going to let us go as far as these experiments and what can be done with it? So that I'm still looking forward to. I'm hoping that it's incredibly in-depth and we get to, do a lot of crazy stuff with that. And then Nuka World, and then it's done. That's actually really upsetting. And it wouldn't be as upsetting if it weren't for that price increase. And it would still kind of suck, like, oh, that's really it. All we have are, like, two big things. And then all the other stuff is kind of little. It's like, oh, you can make more stuff, which that's definitely a cool part of the game, but it's not like the most amazing part of it, to be totally honest. It's still just wandering around the world and having crazy stories and crazy enemies and being able to get, crazy weapons and seeing different parts of the real world, like, just totally changed around. So, I would love to hear, for anyone checking this out, if you bought the season pass after, which I really wish I could remember exactly what it changed from, but I'm pretty sure it was like $30 to $50 or something like that, or it was like 30 to 45. But it was more than $10, I remember. So I'm pretty sure it's either like 30 to 50 or like 20 to 40, and I don't believe it was ever 20. I think I saw it on sale for 20 one time, but the normal original price was like $30. And I would love to know what you guys think about it as far as having gotten the season pass after, and even for people that got it before the price increase. I would love to know how you guys feel, because even I feel kind of crappy for everything they said. Like, I think it's kind of worth it altogether. It's still cost efficient because of course it's going to be like, oh, Far Harbor itself is probably like $10 on its own, and I'm sure Nuka World would be the same thing. So it's like, okay, well, that's $20 right there, and then including the Automatron and the um, Deathmatch Workshop or whatever, and the Vault Workshop and the Contraptions Workshop. That's certainly worth some extra money there. So I'd personally say, yeah, I got my money's worth, but just I'm still disappointed because of how they made it seem like it was going to be like this amazing thing. And if you played Fallout 3 or New Vegas, and I haven't gone all the way through New Vegas, but both those games have much more DLC. I mean, I know they have stuff where it's like, oh, they're added stories within the actual world, but I can speak fully on Fallout 3 because I got the game late, so I got the Game of the Year edition with all the DLC to it. And you go to a couple of different locations. Um, you go to Pittsburgh for one of your things. You go like to like this other location when they added like the new section um, to the finale of the game. They added more story elements, and that I think was worth it because not only do you actually go beyond the main campaign, and they actually added like main campaign stuff, which is a huge deal compared to just another side story. So even if that was smaller, which I think that was a fairly good size of stuff as well, that was actually really fun. And then I'm totally drawing a blank, but I know there's some other places. There are multiple points. So there was the Pittsburgh thing. You go to another location using Liberty Prime, and then there was the other location, which was Point Lookout, and that was like kind of creepy horror based. It's kind of similar to Far Harbor a little bit, just because of um, kind of the fog and the trees and how much water it is and stuff like that. So I kind of like that idea, that aspect of it. But those are like really big chunks of DLC, and like you leave the normal map and you go to different locations, and it's a totally different experience. When you go to the Pittsburgh thing, which I forgot the name of that DLC, you're like a prisoner and stuff, and you have to like basically fight your way through, and you start all over with no weapons, and you have to find a way to survive and kind of escape this prison. And that's really cool. And then the Point Lookout thing is like really creepy and stuff, and it's crazy. And then the Liberty Prime stuff, like I said, expands the actual main story campaign. And then the Mothership Zeta, that was the other one, and that was a really great one. That was really cool, and you actually get abducted on the spaceship. So they had a lot of like off the map things. And then um, New Vegas, I know for one of them for sure takes you off the map, and you meet a different guy and stuff. And I haven't played the other ones, but I've heard that they're like really good, at least even if they don't take you off the map. And these seem like we basically get we get two off the map ones, and I guess because they're bigger, that's why it's kind of like that. So they aren't doing as many big DLC. But I feel like from the Fallout 3 stuff that I remember, I felt like I spent just as much time in one section of those DLC as I did in Far Harbor. So we should be getting like 3 or 4 of those where it takes us to a totally different location, off the map, or add something like really crazy to the map, because I don't know if the Nuka world is going to be like, you install it and then it's like poof, it's this thing, it's been here the whole time. But I would assume it's going to take us off the map and it'll be like a totally different city, maybe in a different state as well. And we'll just have to see how that plays out. I'm sure it'll be fun. It'll definitely be fun to play, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of new stuff to do there, and we'll meet new characters and probably be able to get new companions, which they have had for all the story DLC, at least the two so far. Automatron, you get a new companion AI in robot form, which is actually pretty cool. And then in Far Harbor, you get a human companion that you can have as well. So they added some cool elements. They added new companions, and they added new weapons on both sides of the fence. I didn't really like the Automatron stuff too much because the Tesla weapon, which like shoots lightning, is actually super weak. And then there's one weapon where it uses an Assaultron head, and you actually shoot the laser that it normally shoots, but it hits you with like 23 radiation every time you use it. Or it's not 23, it's like 5 to 10 radiation every time. And it doesn't seem to really do much to the enemy, so I was like, it seems cool, but it's like, as a part of the DLC, adding to the game, it didn't seem to add too much for me at least. At least, maybe if I start over again and do the DLC like at the very beginning and get those DLC weapons, they might do a lot more for me, because Far Harbor has like radiation guns, so they do damage, normal hit damage plus radiation damage. So there's stuff there, but as a whole, it's just like I feel like we've been kind of let down. I still feel like it was, at least for that initial season pass price, it's worth what I paid and what a lot of other people paid. But I don't know if it was really worth the increase in price. I mean, maybe it was. I mean, I guess it's kind of up to you depending on how much you really like the DLC. Far Harbor was fun for sure, and there are multiple options. You basically, you can do like 3 different things, so it certainly has replayability in Far Harbor, and we might get that as well. But even without replayability, just going through it one time, it was a nice little chunk. But you get like 4 times that much, with Fallout 3, and it's like, well, you get this little story of the Automatron thing inside the game, then you get Far Harbor, which is pretty cool, and then we get Nuka World, and then just little stuff in between, where, especially with this game, mods have been like, especially ever since Skyrim, the Bethesda, modding community is just huge, so it just negates that stuff. And even for me, not having it on PC, because I have it for PS4, it's just like, I don't know if this was worth it. Not to mention the fact that they are doing mods for consoles. They already have them on Xbox One, so those people are already probably dealing with the fact that the contraptions thing is absolutely useless, because it's like, well, yeah, I have it now, and there's probably, like I said, some extra stuff in there that hasn't been done in mod form. But it's like, great, I have to still use mods to even make this stuff, because I need like 100 million extra materials to build anything. Like with the Automatron thing, you can't really build any robots beyond like the really basic level unless you have like the engineering stuff, which I didn't think they'd have. I thought, oh, it's DLC, whatever you're at, that's where it is. And it makes sense that you would need to be like scientific or have armory skills and all that. But once I did that, I was like, oh, well, that kind of blows. I can't even make anything with this, because that's not the character I have. I think my first character I could do it, but my second character, when I actually went through the DLC, I was like, oh, I can't even do anything with this. So there's, this Robot Workshop does like nothing for me in this playthrough, because you have to use like, you have to go up to like level 4 in science and armor and all that crap. I was just like, oh, that actually kind of sucks a little. I'd rather, and then mods eventually, when they do come along the PS4, it'll be like, well, I'll just spawn it, or I'll just, spawn in all those materials, and I'll finally be able to use it. And even then, I'll still have to, boost up my stats and stuff. So it just doesn't seem like it's worth it, considering the mod community. That's the biggest thing about it. It's like most of this stuff is done in mods. Of course, there are assets that are only made by the developers. But it's like, oh, elevators, seen that exact same thing. Contraptions, which in itself seems fairly useless to me. The vault thing is probably number 3 on my list of actually useful stuff. And of course, the Automatron story is unique. Like, no one made that story up. So yeah, there are elements to it that are certainly great, but I just feel like we were really let down with this. And, coming off of Skyrim, which I know has a buttload of DLC, I feel like the same thing. Like, I feel like they supported that fairly well. And it just doesn't seem like they did the same with Fallout 4. It's like, we got our 2 big things, little Automatron stuff, and then whatever, I don't know if they're going to put a story to the whole, you run Vault Tech thing, or however that's supposed to play out, but I don't know. I would love to know what you guys think about this. When it was announced, like, oh, this is it, I was like, that's super fast. We only got, like, one really big update and one, like, mini update with the story, and everything else is just, like, aesthetic stuff, pretty much, when you think about it. It's like, oh, I can throw some people and they fight each other. That's cool, but that's aesthetics. Contraptions, almost 100% aesthetic outside of the house building, mechanics. And then the vault thing, it should be pretty fun just to experiment and make up our own stuff, and then of course Nuka World. So I just feel like it's too much little stuff for them to have been like, oh, we're going to be adding so much stuff that we're going to increase the season pass price. When you put those two things together, you have to be adding a buttload of crap. And really, all they added was Vault Tech, which is cool, and Nuka World, which we kind of expected because we all knew it wasn't just going to be Far Harbor. We knew there would be, I was assuming there would be like 2 or 3 more big story things. Maybe not off the map, but at least big stories. And there's like 2 big stories off the map, and then Automatron. And like I said, I haven't done the deathmatch stuff, so there might be a mini story there as well. But it just, like, when you put it together, like, we're increasing the price because we're going to be doing so much stuff, and then it comes out like, oh, this is basically 20 extra things that aren't already done in mods. You know, as a whole, maybe 50 things they've added all together with DLC, at least the contraption stuff that hasn't already been done with mods. And then what we already expected, you know, going off the map, it just doesn't seem like enough to me. And I still enjoy it, of course. I'm sure everybody does that plays it because it's fun, but it just seemed like they were promising so much more than what they gave out. And it's like little workshop stuff, mini things here and there, and then 2 big things compared to their former games where it's like, here's like huge chunks in the game. Even if it doesn't take you somewhere, some of the stuff in Skyrim was just like really big deal. So I don't know, for me personally, a little disappointed with how ultimately it's already ending, you know, coming up on a year of the game. It's like, alright, we're done with DLC and that's it. And it's only been a year so far. Hasn't even been a year yet, and we already know we're getting our final DLC within, basically by, you know, the 1-year anniversary of this game having come out. So that, I think, is a huge problem for it being Fallout and being done by Bethesda, who always has like the craziest stuff for DLC. It's like, yeah, we're done. That's it. So to me, that's the biggest disappointment. But I would love to know what you guys think. So please comment below. Let me know if you guys got the season pass before they did the price increase, after, what you think about the DLC as a whole, especially knowing the modding stuff and how a lot of the DLC is already done in mods. Like I said, some of the assets, of course, are very unique to what they did, you know, to give us for DLC. But there's also a ton of stuff that isn't unique. They just put stuff that's already was in the game, like the elevator thing. They were already in the game. They just made it so where we can make them ourselves, which a lot of people said, which is right. That should have been in there anyway. You're giving us the ability to make houses. Why can't we put elevators in? So there, you know, simple stuff like that isn't that big of a deal. Like, oh, stuff that really off the top should have been in there anyway. So I don't know. I'm a little disappointed with it, even with the cheaper price. It's like, wow, it's already done, and it hasn't even been a year. And it's like, yep, 2 big things and little stuff. So would love to know what you guys think. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.